Nicki Minaj, she's not the one singing. It's actually the voice of Jay-Z. If you grab a Nicki Minaj song and pitch it down, I've got an example. You can actually hear Jay-Z.
Nicki Minaj just went straight at Jay-Z and Beyoncé. Names named, shots fired, and the response from the Carters wasn't a tweet, an interview, or a lyric. It was silence, weaponized. The kind of quiet that makes more noise than 1,000 posts. Nicki pressed go on the timeline, amplified old rumors, and dared the power couple to blink. They didn't. Instead, a quiet move landed that shifted the conversation without a single word. First, the temperature check. Nicki didn't tiptoe, she leaped. She referenced Jay-Z and Beyoncé directly while dragging Roc Nation into the frame. She hinted that the industry gatekeepers weren't just unfriendly, they were allegedly blocking, plotting, and stacking the deck against her. She reposted, replied, and doubled down. The feed got flooded, and in the middle of it, she nudged 2 old internet rabbit holes back into the cycle. The long-running talk around Rymir Satterthwaite claiming Jay-Z is his father, and the conspiracy chatter tied to the late Kathy White.
Hashtag Jay-Z. You ruined hip-hop, you ruined football, you ruined basketball, you ruined touring, you ruined Instagram, you ruined Twitter. The jig is up. All of this is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. And she also is saying, she's mentioning Desiree.
So what did Nicki actually do? She posted, then posted again. She mocked and needled. She used sarcasm and inside jokes. She leaned into nicknames, compared images, and implied imitation. She told her base essentially, look closer. She reminded the internet that she sees everything, that she remembers every slight, and that she's got receipts even if those receipts live in rumor land. And as the replies rolled in, 2 fan armies squared up. Barbz on one side, the BeyHive on the other, with casuals grabbing popcorn in the middle. If the goal was to make noise, it worked. The timeline cracked, but here's where power dynamics get interesting.
Just say this, every label passed up on me. Every record company passed up on me. Every crew, you know, like, I'm from New York. Jay's crew and 50's crew didn't sign me. You know, I wasn't signed to Nas, and, you know, or I wasn't signed to anybody, you know?
Some people shout to be heard, others don't need to. And that's exactly when the silent clapback landed. Cardi B's rollout moved. A key sample connected to Jay-Z's classic era cleared. No subtweet, no press run, no interview quote to screen record. Just the kind of behind-the-scenes paperwork that only happens when real relationships, trust, and business discipline are in play. If you live online, that looks like nothing. If you live in the industry, that looks like everything. It reads like, we're not arguing, we're operating. It says, we're not going to wrestle in the mud. We're going to keep building. And the timing stacked against the noise made the message feel even colder. Not petty, not loud, precise. Let's sit in that for a second. Silence, when you have leverage, isn't empty. It's heavy. It suggests you're not worried about the conversation because you're busy controlling the calendar.
The rapper says of Beyonce's husband and his Roc Nation company, quote, I hope the money stolen from my tour was hidden really well. I'd hate for there to be money laundering, embezzlement, etc.
You're managing releases, clearing samples, signing checks, and showing up in places that aren't Twitter. That's not evasion, that's strategy. And for anyone paying attention, it reads like a statement without punctuation. We don't need to clap back because the work will do it for us. Now about those rumors. Because Nicki didn't just throw shade, she amplified stories that live in the long, messy history of celebrity conspiracy talk. The Rymir Satterthwaite claims have been circulating for years. There have been filings, twists, and headlines. There's also been pushback, skepticism, and dead ends. It's been a carousel. As for Kathy White, her name gets pulled into deep-cut threads that try to connect tragedy, timing, and celebrity myth. People close to those circles have rejected the claims. But the internet has an appetite, and rumor has a way of resurfacing the moment a megastar says, look. That's why the framing matters. Meanwhile, the Carters kept stepping out with unbothered energy. Smiles, family moments, legacy rhythm, the kind of real-life quiet that says, we are not pressed. That, paired with a polished music rollout tied back to Jay's catalog, felt like an answer that wasn't an answer, more like a mirror. Take the bait or don't. They didn't. And that made the bait look small. That's the power of restraint.
Nicki Minaj did a verse on the Carter 6, the bonus version of the album. She says, NFL fire some N-words and then call us. Now, the song is called Banned from NO, Banned from New Orleans. And, you know, they're throwing shots at the NFL because, you know, remember Nicki Minaj spoke out when Lil Wayne didn't get his chance.
You can't argue with someone who refuses to enter the room. You can only argue with yourself. But let's talk pace, because the audience feels it. Nicki's post came fast, the way a timeline flood does when an artist feels cornered and wants to tell their side. The accusations widened. The circle of blame grew. She gestured at executives, at gatekeepers, at anyone who might be pulling strings. She pointed back at moments fans remember and told them to connect dots. And because the internet is built for chaos, the dots connected in wild shapes. Barbies carried the torch. They stitched clips, made comparisons, and turned theories into trends. But the BeyHive is built for this too. They counterposted, they archived screenshots, they brought receipts from years of myth-busting and said, "We've heard this before." That's how Stan Wars work.
Now, you've also said that Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, and Lil Wayne were some of your biggest influences when you were coming up. What did each of them have that you wanted to emulate?
Jay-Z, business savvy. Foxy Brown, immaculate delivery.
Speed wins the minute. Receipts win the week. The silent clapback kept winning the week. Not in likes, in optics. The optics of calm. The optics of a couple celebrating elders and legacy. The optics of slowing down, showing up, and not explaining. Remember, the people at the very top didn't get there by chasing every storm. They learned to let storms pass. They learned to put out one signal, not 10, and let the culture do the translation. That's the difference between narrative control and narrative chasing. When you control the room, the narrative conforms. When you chase the narrative, the room eats you alive. But let's be fair to the psychology here. Why does silence make some people furious? Because silence collapses the script. If you post, they post. If you rant, they reply. That's how internet drama is supposed to work. It's call and response.
Jay-Z invaded Gaza. You might as well just come on, add some more to that, Nicki. Don't stop there.
Yeah, she says there's a lot here, man.
Jay-Z's the reason for processed foods. Okay, he's the reason that there's artificial dyes in the candy. What else?
When the response doesn't arrive, the caller feels unheard. In that vacuum, frustration grows. Anger mutates into more posts, more pushes, more look at this. And suddenly, what might have been a one-day skirmish becomes a multi-week saga without the other side ever lifting a finger. That's the trap. The more you post, the more invested you look. The more they don't, the more composed they seem. It's asymmetrical warfare, and silence is the bigger weapon. Let's zoom out and talk business versus narrative. Short term, yes, chaos pulls views. It drives clicks. It makes people say, "Did you see what she said?" But long term, industry doors don't swing for chaos. They swing for consistency, leverage, and predictability. Clearing a sample isn't pretty on the timeline, but it's everything in the boardroom. Knowing that you can integrate a classic record into a new single without drama signals pull. It says we can touch the archive and power the next wave. That's the real scoreboard. Who can activate catalog, uphold brand value, and make the world show up for an event that didn't need beef to exist? That brings us back to Cardi's moment in all this. She didn't become the main character of the argument. She became the main character of a release. That's a different playbook. And because that playbook doesn't rely on sparring, it stands up even after the discourse cools. You can argue with a post, you can't argue with a song people replay. That's how silence wins twice. Once in the moment, and again when the moment turns into a metric. Now about those unverified narratives again, because they do shape perception. When a celebrity hints at a rumor, it's like striking a match in a dry forest. People sprint to add oxygen. Threads multiply. Old screenshots resurface, stripped of context and repackaged like brand new tea. But where does it land? If the claim stays unconfirmed, the person who amplified it risks erosion of trust. Audiences remember when a bombshell fizzles. That's the credibility tax. Pay it often enough and even your true claims get side-eyed. It's the worst kind of discount, a discount on your own word.
She then warned Jay, "We've calculated about $100 to $200 million owed to her so far," she claims. But she's willing to make things better.
The internet is loud, but music is patient. The Carters play patient. They build timelines that don't depend on outrage. They choose family milestones over comment section battles. They keep it human. It's not that they can't clap back. It's that they don't need to. That's the shift you're feeling. Whether it's a sample clearance, a curated appearance, or a simple photograph of joy, they're sending a signal. We live here. We belong to something bigger than the algorithm. And because that signal doesn't change with the weather, it reads as power. This is where fans ask, so who's winning? If your scoreboard is retweets, the answer swings hour by hour. If your scoreboard is leverage, the answer looks stable. Nicki's talent is not in question. Her catalog is undeniable. Her impact is carved into an entire era. But strategy isn't just about what you have. It's about how you use it. Turning your feed into a courtroom rarely ends well when the other side refuses to show up. The jury you assembled ends up judging the only person in the room, you. There's also the human layer no one wants to talk about. Fame is a machine that rewards volatility for about 5 minutes, then punishes it forever. It sells the lie that attention is love. It isn't. Attention is a rental. Love is ownership. That's why the vibe of legacy keeps beating the thrill of virality. Legacy doesn't need to trend every Tuesday. It needs to stand every decade. That's what you see in the Carter's posture. There's no panic, no scurrying. Just the steady, boring discipline that keeps empires upright when the weather turns foul. And yes, the stan wars are real. Barbies arrive fast. BeyHive arrives precise. Clips, threads, compilations, this is the new media battlefield. But there's a consequence fans sometimes forget. When you push unverified claims hard and they don't stick, you're not just risking the other side's image. You're risking your favorites. Because now your favorite looks like they need rumor to win instead of music.
The jig is up, yo.
I heard that though. I heard he was the reason for Essence Festival this weekend.
That was definitely Hov.
That was Hov.
That's why the cleanest plays always live in the art. The song is the receipt no one can argue with. The performance is the document no one can redact. The catalog is the case you never stop winning. Let's draw a thin line between disagreement and defamation. Public figures call each other out all the time. That's part of hip-hop's DNA. But calling out gets messy when it leans on unverified personal claims. That's when the game stops being about bars and starts being about lives. Lives that existed before the fame and will exist after it. There's also a lesson in how to read power. Power doesn't announce itself with exclamation marks. Power shows up as access. You see it in who can call a sample owner and get a yes. You see it in who can clear red tape in days. You see it in who can turn a family event into a cultural moment without asking for permission. That's the quiet thing that loud moments can't touch. And the more you watch it, the more you realize why some people stop arguing. They're working the levers you can't see. Still, let's talk about Nicki's side with empathy. Feeling boxed out is real. Feeling like the gate is closed just for you is brutal. When you believe someone else is pulling strings against you, your first impulse is to drag the strings into the light. The risk is obvious. If you pull hard and nothing comes up, you're left holding air. That's when fans start asking hard questions about strategy, not talent. It's a painful pivot, and it's the pivot this saga seems to be forcing. So where does this all go? Expect more noise. Expect more posts hinting at who's really behind what. Expect more stan trench warfare and more attempts to pull friends, rivals, and executives into the blast radius. Also expect, on the other side, more silence, more perfectly timed appearances, more elegant, boring, grown person wins, more calendar moves that say, we'll meet you in the results, not the replies. If you're scoring this like a meme war, chaos looks competitive. If you're scoring it like a career, composure is running away with the game. Here's the thought that lingers after the comments section cools. When you zoom out, you realize this isn't about who can land a heavier subtweet. It's about who can carry pain without making it the headline. Who can take the heat and still protect their house? Who can turn a moment of friction into a moment of focus? JayZ and Beyoncé have built a brand on that kind of restraint. It's not flashy, it's not memeable, it's bulletproof, and it's the hardest style to copy because it requires the one thing the internet hates, patience. The temptation, of course, is to ask for blood, to demand a diss track, a name drop, a bar that makes the room gasp. And maybe one day we'll get a song that brushes the edges of this saga. But look at the pattern. The Carters rarely let the internet set their agenda. They move when the art says move. They answer when the work requires an answer. If the answer comes, it will arrive in the language they speak best, precision. Until then, the quiet is the message. For Nicki, the path forward still runs through music, always has. She doesn't need rumors to remind the world who she is. One flawless verse does more than a week of screenshots. One undeniable record melts 1,000 threads. She knows that. We all know that. Which is why the most powerful plot twist left in this story might be the simplest. Turning down the volume and turning up the studio. The internet loves a pivot. Give it a masterpiece and the same feeds that mocked will kneel. That's how fickle this place is. It bows to excellence, even when excellence shows up 5 minutes late. As for the rumor ecosystem, Reimer Satterthwaite, Kathy White, and every other theory orbiting the conversation, treat them the way you'd treat fog. You can't grab it, you can only pass through it. You note the visibility, you slow your roll, and you don't pretend it's solid ground. Claims that stay unverified remain what they are, claims. Interesting to discuss, dangerous to declare. If proof arrives, facts will carry themselves. If proof never arrives, the rumor collapses under its own weight. That's not bias, that's gravity. One more point on silent clapbacks, because the phrase is catchy, but the concept is deeper. A silent clapback isn't a coy stunt. It's governance. It's what powerful artists do when they're managing careers, companies, families, and legacies at once. They pick their battles based on stakes, not noise. They don't let every wave hit the hull. They don't confuse the ocean for the destination. That's why silence is terrifying to opponents. It suggests there's a bigger plan that won't bend for theater. So what did we actually witness? We saw Nicki Minaj unload on Jay-Z, Beyoncé, and the system she believes is aligned against her. We saw her amplify 2 controversial rumor threads that the internet has chewed on for years, unverified and widely disputed. We saw the Carters decline to trade posts or press quotes. We saw a perfectly timed business move tied to classic JayZ DNA rollout in the middle of the noise. We saw family-first imagery that said unbothered without saying anything at all. We saw the timeline rage, the stands mobilize, and the culture do what it always does, pick sides and keep scrolling. And now comes the part that matters, the next record, the next rollout, the next real-world outcome. That's the scoreboard history keeps. Not the thread with the most retweets, not the rumor with the spiciest angle. Outcomes, songs that live, moves that last, careers that don't need to explain themselves to win. If you're tired of the noise, start grading the results. You'll find the answer to who's really up right there, in the numbers that aren't loud but never lie. Is the cold, surgical no response the new power flex? Or does hip-hop still crave the messy back and forth that turns every Wednesday into a war room? Drop your call in the comments, but remember this as you type. The loudest voice runs the day. The steadiest hand runs the decade. And when the lights go down, the quiet ones are still standing. That's not shade. That's the art of outlasting the internet.